excited you were here with us. It's finally game day. We had last week. This week, not as exciting maybe as the week before, but regardless, it is game day and college football is here to stay. So, as we go ahead and get into the program, man, what a week it was in the college football universe. I truly don't even know how to describe it. We had the Big Ten. Oh, yes, here we're playing football. Here's our schedule. Remember, they gave it out. Then, no. We're not playing. We're not doing it at all. How could you ever play college football? And then everyone played, well, not everyone, but I think what really helped move the Big Ten along was the fact that Notre Dame played in there. I mean, Notre Dame is in the Big Ten region-wise. They see Notre Dame, and then it goes, oh, whoa, we're going to play football because you can't have football without us, which you could. But so the Big Ten's back. That's going to be, we had planned our show out. We had done that. That's what I do right after this is I plan the next week's. And I was like, we probably should mention that. So we'll go ahead and we'll talk about the Big Ten later. But we have a jam-packed show and so much to talk about today. Not as many exciting games as last week. And last week wasn't exactly some huge weekend either. But what I think is really exciting is the SEC's back in 1 week. And I mean, that's really the only thing I've been excited about. And I will just have to see how it all goes. Another thing I'm also excited about, U.S. Open. We're not going to be mentioning it on this show a lot because this is a college football show. But we have the U.S. Open coming up today, day 3. So you'll want to watch that in the morning, mid-morning, until I believe Georgia Tech UCF is on. And then later in the day, we're going to have Louisville, Miami. I believe our first ranked matchup of the year. A big ACC showdown. It'll be on Saturday Night Football on ABC. But with that, we're going to start our show how we always do with our Saturday slate. So let's go ahead and get into it. Oklahoma State and Tulsa is our first game. Remember, they were supposed to play last week. They ended up not being able to. They can play this week. It was a COVID problem. That's why they didn't play last week. But now they're going to be playing in Boone Pickens Stadium. Oklahoma State's gotten a lot of hype. There were a couple teams in the Big 12 that got a lot of hype. And then that kind of went down the drain last week. We'll get into our week 1 surprises and thoughts later in the show. But we'll see how Oklahoma State can do. They have that great running back, Howard. So we'll just kind of see how they can do against Tulsa. I mean, they shouldn't have any problems. I can't think that they would have any problems. But the Big 12 has had a lot of problems, so we'll see how this all goes down. Then our next game on the ACC Network, for those of you that have it, I know I don't. There's Pittsburgh and Syracuse, another good ACC matchup. It's just something to watch. I mean, these two teams aren't exactly too exciting. It'll be at Pittsburgh. Syracuse lost last week at North Carolina. They were really close. I believe it was a 6-point game at the half, 9-3. They missed a couple field goals to really make that interesting around halftime, but then they kind of fell apart. North Carolina ended up winning, and it wasn't very close. Pittsburgh, I think they blew out whoever they were playing, and so yay for them. Go ACC. Then we have Tulane and Navy. This is a fun one on ABC. This is definitely what I would turn your TV to right after we end and college game day ends. Oh, SEC Nation's back. Definitely want to turn that on. I know they have Jordan Rogers is joining the show, and Roman Harper, former Alabama player. So definitely kind of a new cast. Laura Rutledge and Tim Tebow will still be on the show, so that's a fun one to watch. That had nothing to do with Tulane and Navy on ABC. Tulane was able to get the win at South Alabama last week. Navy, remember, they just were awful. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. They were awful when they played BYU. Labor Day night, everyone was watching. Everyone was like, what in the Chinese New Year is going on? And so we'll see if they've changed any of their practice things, and this isn't just a straight-up blowout. Because Navy is going to be running that ball, Tulane will probably try and do what BYU did. They just ran the ball all over them. They didn't even really throw because they didn't have to, because Navy just straight up couldn't tackle. And then I believe our last game in the 11 a.m. Central Time slot, no, we have one more, is Boston College and Duke on ESPN3. So you can only stream that game if you have the ESPN app or some kind of Apple TV or something. These are two pretty crummy teams. They're projected, and I picked them to be the two worst in the ACC. But it's football, and it's at least two teams you've probably heard of before. So it should be a good one. David Cutcliffe's squad trying to bounce back from their loss at Notre Dame last week. They were contesting around halftime, and then Notre Dame blew them away towards the end. So we'll see. I think this should be a good one. Of course, we'll make our picks later in the program. And then, the heartbreaker. So let's just start with the Baylor saga. I mean, it's been a saga. You could write a movie. So last week we told you that we weren't going to be able to watch the Baylor La Tech game because La Tech had some COVID problems, and Baylor I think they ended up canceling that game. They didn't postpone it. They're like, yeah, we're not playing you anymore. And so then we're like, oh no. Well, that Saturday, probably 5 hours after our show ended, Baylor and Houston made an agreement and said, we'll play, which is so bizarre because you think about it, Clemson and, most everybody has all these games planned out, when I'm going to have kids. My kids will be playing in some, my kids' generation would be playing in some of these games. I mean, they have 20, 40 things, done. I mean, it's crazy. Yet, Baylor and Houston scheduled their game from last Saturday to play this Saturday. So that's fun. But, so we get our hopes up. It's going to be, big noon football on Fox. Oh, we have a good game to watch. I mean, not that the other games aren't good, but this is the big game. We can watch it. It's two relevant teams. Oh, I'm so excited. No. Baylor had COVID problems. Game postponed. Wah, wah, wah. So, I don't really know. There's not going to be anything on. But when we're over, I keep promoting all the TV things. This is actually pretty interesting. So, as we know, with the Big Ten saga, they're releasing their schedule on the Big Noon Kickoff pregame show. So I don't know what's going to come on after that show, but hey, I'm sure there'll be more people watching that pregame show than they will actually watch the game because they released that Big Ten schedule, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people up north that are very interested in that. Okay, and our next game, we talked about Notre Dame beating Duke. Well, now Notre Dame gets to play USF. What a fun one. On the USA channel, that's because NBC has the rights to the US Open, so they'll have the U.S. Open on all of their networks. So that's how Notre Dame got bumped all the way to the USA channel. They'll be taking on USF. This was their, when we had to do the whole redoing schedules, and the ACC took Notre Dame in. Notre Dame ended up signing with USF to play a game because they ended up not playing Navy and some of the other schools. So that's how this matchup happened. And then our next cancellation of the day, and the 2:30 time slot. Ooh, it says 2:30 a.m. I'm not playing that early. North Carolina will be taking on the Charlotte 49ers, but they won't. This game has actually been canceled, and on ESPN.com it does say canceled, not postponed. North Carolina, that was their non-conference team. Their one non-conference team they were allotted from the ACC, so I guess they just won't play anybody non-conference wise, which is fine. I mean, this game was really going to make the difference anyways. So they won't be playing. I just thought I'd throw that out there and let everybody know. And then the game we're all excited for in Cardinal Stadium in Louisville, Kentucky, the Miami Hurricanes will be taking on the Louisville Cardinals on Saturday Night Football at 6:30 p.m. Central Time on ABC. I'm definitely excited. This is probably one of the biggest games of the year to this point. This is definitely one I'm super duper excited about. We'll have to see. I would say one of the things I'm definitely looking for, of course, a little bit of an Auburn fan. Former Auburn offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley is currently the offensive coordinator for Miami. He went from Auburn, then he went to UConn, and then UConn kind of, they left the AAC, and they just had all kinds of problems. He ended up going to SMU, and remember, SMU had a big breakout year that nobody was expecting last year. So now we have, we had a great year at SMU. Miami had an awful year offensive-wise, and so now he is at Miami with quarterback Derek King. So that'll be a fun one to watch, see how he does in his first season. Of course, this is a crazy season to try and implement an offense with just about no offseason at all to work with. And then our last game, NC State takes on Wake Forest at 7 o'clock on the ACC network. Wake Forest got their doors blown off by Clemson last week, but I can't imagine that anything less would happen to NC State. So I think this is a fun middle of the pack game for the ACC. But we'll see. I can't think this is going to be too terribly interesting. I probably won't watch it, to be completely honest. But I just noticed there is one final game that we forgot to throw in here on all of our graphics. UCF plays Georgia Tech. How about the Ramblin' Wreck? They went down to Tallahassee last week and got a big old win. I was actually very surprised, to be honest with you. I thought their offense looked great under head coach Jeff Collins in his second year, really trying to change the whole culture. I mean, really a whole new scheme because, they didn't have any athletes, which, it worked. They won an ACC championship, I believe, when they were running the triple option. But, it was really just kind of turning it all around. They wasn't not good last year, but they won. They won their opening ACC game and opener of the entire year down in Tallahassee. They take on a ranked, I believe, number 14 UCF squad at home. They will have fans in the stands, so this will be a fun one to watch. I'm definitely excited to see if they can get a big ranked win. Hey, maybe even Georgia Tech might even get ranked if they win this one. I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't say that this early, but we'll see. That's definitely a fun one, and we'll definitely make a pick on that. But I would say the headlines, if you were to look at college football, this is probably what's going to pop up on your Google page. The Big Ten is back. And with that goes all of our lovely predictions we did last week. They were irrelevant because they didn't have the Big Ten in them. So we're just going to redo our college football playoff predictions. We might make some like mid-season when the Big Ten's back, New Year's 6 predictions, kind of like, where are we at? But we're going to go ahead and just update our playoff picks. But I would say for the Big Ten being back, who this benefits the most, I would have to think is Ohio State. I know they were probably the fans that, everyone was upset, but I'd have to think they were the fans that were the most upset because, obviously you had a championship caliber team. They were so close just to getting to that game last season. And then Justin Fields threw that interception in the back of the end zone. And the Tigers, or the Clemson Tigers, we had 2 Tigers last year, got to take on the LSU Tigers in the national championship game in New Orleans last season. But I would say with Justin Fields, he's now back in the Heisman. He was never out of it, but he wasn't playing, and what was he really in? So Justin Fields is now back in the Heisman race. It's going to be really weird to watch the polls. They actually said, and we'll have our top 25 breakdown in a minute, but they actually released Big Ten teams aren't eligible this upcoming poll that they'll vote on Sunday and Monday to come back. So I think they're going to wait to start ranking them until they actually start playing again. So it's going to be weird because Ohio State went from 3 to not ranked, and then they'll go back to 3 a whole bunch of weeks later, and they nothing, so it's kind of bizarre how this all has gone down. I would say everyone's happy that the Big Ten finally decided to play. I think everyone thinks that the Big Ten's way of how we got here was so bizarre. Just their decision making, it was really very questionable, and kind of weird how it was just, we can definitely play, and then, oh my gosh, it's so unsafe, we just could never, and then, yeah, we're fine, we can definitely go play. So I don't really know how that happened. It'd be very interesting to be in the room where it happened and see how that all went down. But we want to go ahead and update our Patrick's updated playoff predictions. Drum roll. Okay. So I pretty much changed out Ohio State with Oklahoma in that 2 spot. So I think it'll be Clemson 1, Ohio State 2, Auburn 3. Like I said, I don't think anyone will come out of the SEC alive as an undefeated. I think teams will end up being okay. I probably shouldn't use that term this year. And then I think Oklahoma will slide to that 4 spot. They'll probably lose a game they're not supposed to and then sneak in and then get their doors blown off in the playoffs. Have you ever heard that story before? So we'll see. So I still like Auburn and Clemson in that national championship game, but I do think Ohio State from the Big Ten will get into it. And what a week in college football we had last week. Let's go ahead and get into our week 1 thoughts, all the crazy things that have happened with that. So we have our North Carolina-Syracuse game. Okay, so this isn't a surprising score, but I will say I honestly should have just put the halftime score up here. I believe it was 9-3 Syracuse missed a couple of field goals, but Sam Howell and the Tar Heels did not look that good. They definitely did not look like the squad everyone was been hyping up, and Sam Howell's the dark horse for the Heisman, and all this stuff. It's just not. I don't think they're going to be as good as everyone's saying they would be. It's also week 1, and we could overreact to everything. So we'll see, but I don't think North Carolina is a championship caliber or even, and maybe a New Year's Six caliber team. I think they're a good team, and I think they'll beat a whole bunch of teams in the ACC, but we'll just have to see how they do. Our first upset alert game last week was Iowa State and Louisiana Lafayette. Now, Iowa State has gotten all kinds of, what's the next coach is like the next up and coming, and Iowa State's gonna be good. They could challenge Oklahoma for the Big 12. No. Iowa State stinks. They, for the majority of their time, have always have, and they do again. They lost, and here's the thing. It wasn't like some fluky play. Oh my gosh, how did they win? They blew it. They got beat. I mean, there's just really no way around it. They just straight up got beat at home to Louisiana Lafayette. So congratulations to Louisiana Lafayette. I know this has been kind of it's been a somber offseason, I would say, for everyone, but specifically for their program. They lost a coach, not to COVID, but some other health reasons. So I'm sure I know it was a big win for them. And then what I would say was probably one of the biggest shocks, Georgia Tech and Florida State. Old Tech just kept on going. They missed, I think I wrote it, and our Patrick Purdy newsletter will be posted later today and sent out to all of our fun subscribers. So thank you for subscribing. But where was I going with this? So I wrote in there, they went 1 for 3 on field goals, and they missed an extra point. He actually said in the postgame, Jeff Collins, their head coach, that they had not really been working on it because they were really trying to do other live things. Well, it came back to almost bite them in the butt. They could have won by a whole lot more. They had a couple very costly turnovers. They were able to clean it up in the second half, take the lead on a big made field goal, and they ended up winning. I was impressed with their offense. They really moved the ball well. They obviously couldn't score, and they definitely had a whole bunch of turnover and red zone problems. It was almost like if they didn't score some 30-yard play and they got into the red zone somehow, like they weren't going to score. Like it was this weird thing. So, but when it's all said and done, Georgia Tech won. And then, Lord, this was really surprising. So Coastal Carolina and Kansas had a 2-year agreement. Coastal Carolina won last year. And then they won again this year. I didn't think Kansas would be anything good. I didn't think they might not make a bowl game, but I thought they would take a step. I think Les Miles I still think Les Miles is a good coach, but I definitely thought they would take a step, and this was 3 steps back. So definitely a shock. Kansas scored a couple late just to make this interesting-ish. So this isn't even real. Coastal Carolina just straight up beat them. It wasn't. Their offense was running all over them. It wasn't really that close. So it was definitely quite a surprise for sure. But now it's time. We're about halfway through our show, and it's time for our top 25 breakdown as we go ahead and get into the AP poll. So if you remember last week, we had a fun poll that I've actually seen that was based on the voting for teams that didn't get into the playoff, or the AP poll. It kept putting them down, so it pretty much took out all of the teams not playing, your Pac-12 teams, your Big Ten teams, that kind of thing. Well, they ended up doing that this week. The Big Ten is out of it. The Pac-12 is out of it. Anybody not playing is out of it. I don't really know why they were ever in it, but so that's how this goes. So we'll go ahead and show you Week 2's AP poll top 25. So we still have Clemson in the 1 spot. Alabama slides up into the 2 after Ohio State drops out. Then Oklahoma actually passed Georgia. I believe Oklahoma was 5, Georgia was 4. Oklahoma flipped over them. I don't really know what was that impressive about their win over Missouri State. So Georgia's in the 4 spot. Oh, did you see Georgia's uniforms that they released? UGLY. And then Florida is in the 5 spot. LSU is in the 6. How many SEC teams do we have? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 SEC teams in the top 10. Well, it's like that, and then there's like two more the rest of the poll. That's a lot. But like we said, there's two conferences not playing. So Notre Dame's in the 7, Texas is in the 9, Texas A&M is in the 10. So pretty much a lot of all these teams pretty much, unless you lost like Iowa State, you pretty much just shifted up in the same order. So we still pretty much have our same order. Tennessee's all the way up to 15. Do we really think they're the 15th best team in the country? I guess we'll just have to find out starting next week. Memphis is in the 16. Miami and Louisville got in the polls. In your 17-18, that'll be our big matchup tonight. The Ragin' Cajuns were able to jump on in the poll after a big win against Iowa State. Virginia Tech made it in. BYU's had a couple of impressive wins, and they made it in. Kentucky sneaked on in, so that Auburn-Kentucky game will be, I believe, the only ranked SEC matchup of the day. And then Appalachian State and Pittsburgh, who will be playing later today. So that's a pretty fun top 25 for sure. But now the bulk of our program last week, we previewed the entire ACC. Well, this week we're going to preview the Big 12 and take a guess at what we're doing next week. The SEC. And I'm excited about that one. But we got to get through the Big 12 first. There's only one Big 12 game today. It's that Oklahoma State game. But we hadn't talked a lot about the Big 12 yet. So I was like, well, why don't we just go ahead and do that? So we're going to go ahead and show you our Patrick's Big 12 standing predictions. That sounds really official. So we'll start from the bottom. Well, we'll start from the top. So I really would have to say, in the Big 12, when it's all said and done, it's Oklahoma's conference till it isn't. Oklahoma's won the Big 12. Oh, Lord knows how many times in a row now. It's getting hard to track because they've won it so many times in a row. And until somebody else can truly show me that they can dethrone Oklahoma, it's Oklahoma's conference. It's Oklahoma's conference until someone else can prove them wrong. And I'm mostly emphasizing Texas. Until Texas can beat them and go win the Big 12. Because remember, Texas beat them, I believe, 2 years ago and then lost to them again in the Big 12 championship game. I was like, well, that was all for nothing. And Oklahoma slipped back into the playoffs. I believe so, yes. Okay, so I think Oklahoma State's in the 3. They've gotten some hype. I can't imagine that they're really going to do anything too exciting. We'll see. I don't think they'll beat Oklahoma. Baylor's in the 4. Baylor, weird. Obviously, it's been the saga the last 2 weeks. But then they have a new head coach in Dave Aranda, who came over from LSU's defensive coordinator. They still have Charlie Brewer at their quarterback, so I kind of just picked them based off talent. But it might be really hard because if you're trying to implement a whole new scheme, I really think that could be tough. With this very limited offseason, that's definitely something we keep repeating. And then Iowa State's in the 5. Okay, so Iowa State lost that terrible game, but that doesn't have anything to do with Big 12 standings. I think they still have a good amount of talent, and I think they could finish middle of the pack. Nothing exciting. Nothing more than 5. TCU's in the 6. Kansas State, who lost to Arkansas State, in the 7. We'll just have to see how they do. Then you have West Virginia in the 8. Texas Tech is in the 9 spot. And then Kansas, who I thought might finally get out of the just awfulness of being dead last in everything when it comes to college football. No. They must be here to stay. We'll see if Les Miles' squad can turn it around when they play next week. But we're going to go ahead and get into our team previews. Since there's only 10 Big 12 teams, we'll go ahead and do every single one. So we'll start off with the Oklahoma Sooners. It's playoff or bust for them. I think it's going to be another great offense under Lincoln Riley. I would be shocked if they didn't win the Big 12 this year. Texas would have to take some big step. I think Sam Ehlinger's always a little bit overhyped, but whatever. So we'll see. Their goal, and I think it's been their goal, and they clearly can't accomplish this. They need to win a playoff game. They've yet to win a playoff game. They've gotten in the playoff a whole bunch of times. They've won the Big 12 a whole bunch of times, but they haven't won a playoff game. And it's kind of Lincoln's turning into big game Bob a little bit. So we're gonna see if they can win a big game, a big playoff game against a quality opponent, and if that defense can show up. That's a big thing for them. Next, we have the Texas Longhorns. Texas they were disappointing last year. They won their bowl game. I think they went 7-5. They won their bowl game last year. They actually blew out Utah. It wasn't close in the Alamo Bowl. Um, we just have to see with Texas. I really have no idea. I mean, they beat UTEP, so what does that really say about anything? UTEP's not good. They haven't been good. I don't really think ever. Um, so we'll just have to see with Texas if Sam Ellinger can take that next step and be the quarterback everybody's hyped him up to be. It's just really going to be between Tom Herman and Sam Ellinger. They've been in their offense for 4 straight years. I can't think why they can't be good. So we'll have to wait and see. They could literally, I mean, just about if they went 7-5 again, or if they went undefeated. I mean, just about nothing would surprise me. They're kind of all over the place, but I think the real question is, when's Texas going to be back? When? Next we have Oklahoma State. The Cowboys have definitely gotten some hype coming into this year. I don't know if I'm really buying the hype per se. Actually, I'm not. I'm just gonna say it. I'm not. I do think they have. I mean, they have their Heisman hopeful in their running back position. Mike Gundy, he's a good coach. I think they'll surprise people. Maybe they'll beat Texas or win a game they're not supposed to. But I can't think that they're gonna win the Big 12 this year. I just think Oklahoma's too strong. But that Bedlam game should be a lot of fun. At least I hope it is. Then you have Baylor taking with their new head coach and Dave Aranda. They still have Charlie Brewer at quarterback. They went to the Sugar Bowl last year. They didn't win the Sugar Bowl, but they got there. So go Baylor. Matt Rule's off to the NFL. It's gonna be really hard for them. They obviously didn't have a non-conference game, which hurts. But I mean, it wasn't like some. It would have really helped to have a quality win against Houston. So that hurts them. But we'll just have to see how Baylor does this year. Like I said, Matt Rule really helped them out. Matt Rule took them from a deep, dark place, and they were deep and dark, to a very prosperous environment in the Sugar Bowl. So we'll just have to see. They could kind of be all over the place, because when you have a new head coach and you've had no time to implement anything, who really knows? Then we have TCU, Gary Patterson. I think he's been their head coach ever since I've been alive. So we'll just have to see how TCU does this year. They've kind of been middle of the pack for what seems like ever now. We'll just have to see if they can really take a step and surprise people. But I just think when it comes to teams like Texas and Oklahoma State, I just don't know if TCU has the talent to compete with those teams. But who knows? Like I said, that's what makes college football great. It could be just another big surprise. We then have West Virginia under head coach Neil Brown in year 2. West Virginia had an okay year last year. Actually, they had a bad year. We're not sugarcoating it here on the Patrick Party pregame show. They had a bad year. Yeah. We'll see. They blew out whoever they played last week. But, like I said, it was a crummy non-conference team. So what does that really get you? We'll have to see if, they were competing with Oklahoma for a while for those Big 12 championship games. But that's really what they're going to need to get back to. They had a lot of turnover last year. They had a whole bunch of freshmen and sophomores. We'll really see, maybe not this year, but maybe next year might be a year to maybe circle and say this is kind of a telltale sign for where this program's going. They're going to have a lot of people that have been under Neil Brown's program from the beginning playing. So we'll just have to kind of see what's up with that. And then the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Ever since they got rid of Cliff Kingsbury, they've kind of just been off the map. I can't even tell you the last time I watched one of their games. We'll just have to see. I'm predicting them way bottom of the Big 12. I just don't think they're going to be that good. They haven't been the same since Mike Leach was gone. And Mike Leach is a fun personality, and that's really all I have to say about them. And then Kansas. Oh, poor Kansas. I almost feel bad, but I don't. They can't seem to get good. They really, they can't. They've tried. I think Les Miles could really turn this around. I guess it's going to take a lot longer than we thought. It is only year 2 of the Mad Hatter being there. So we'll just have to see. It's kind of weird. Who knows? I can't think that they're going to be anything special this year. Especially when you get blown out by Coastal Carolina. I don't understand. I don't understand how you can be so terrible for so long. And then Iowa State, another team that had been so terrible for so long, then kind of came back. They made it. I think they lost to Washington State, but they made it to an Alamo Bowl. They always get a lot of love. Everybody's always giving them props and they can do it. It's a surprise. But they're not that good. Let's be real. People were picking them as this trendy, they could surprise people in the Big 12. No. They're just not very good. And that's really all we have to say about them. That's my rant for the day. The Patrick Party rant for the day. Iowa State isn't good. Kansas State, oh man, this surprised me. They beat Oklahoma last year, which there's always one crummy team that beats Oklahoma. I guess we've just gotten accustomed to that. But one thing that I've just really been surprised about with Kansas State, I was so shocked. I thought they had some good wins last year. They had a good season. They definitely got buy-in with their new head coach. And then they just came out and laid an egg. I mean, they just did terrible. I was very, very surprised. There were a lot of people at that game. I was actually very, I was like, what? When we were watching. I guess they just didn't do that great of a job of regulating the fans because they sold the right number of tickets. It was just everyone clumped up in the middle on the 50-yard line. So I don't know how they'll fix that, but that's interesting. But now, enough with all of our team previews. Let's get into our Big 12 games of the year. Texas and Oklahoma, definitely the game of the year. It would take the S off. It's the game of the year. There's nothing short of that. This is what I think would decide. They're actually still playing in Dallas, by the way. I don't know how many fans, if there'll be any fans. I just thought it was interesting. They're going to be playing in Dallas. So who knows? But this is the game of the year. This is what's going to decide it. Sam Ehlinger. And then you have on the other side Lincoln Riley against Tom Herman. This is a big rivalry game. Everybody knows it. And we'll just have to see. Texas has not really been that close the last couple of years. They've not really gotten within at least 2 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield. They're all just kind of, well, who lost? Kyler Murray was the one that did not win. But other than that, we'll just have to see. But they need to straight up beat them. It doesn't need to be some, oh my gosh, we upset them. We did it. We shocked the world. They just need to go out and beat them if they want to be Texas proud football. So we'll just, I don't know. And then we have the Big 12. Now we're getting into our games of the year because this is the game of the year. Maybe it will be. Baylor and Oklahoma State. Baylor's just a little bit all over the place. And Oklahoma State, this is a game, if they want to start to kind of build up, they need to win this kind of game. All of the middle tier. They can't be losing to teams like Baylor and Iowa State and Kansas State and that kind of thing. So this is a big game. This is a big game for Dave Aranda as the new head coach of Baylor. This is a big game for Mike Gundy if they really want to potentially get into a big-time bowl game. So I think this is a big kind of 3-4-ish type spot in the Big 12 standings of who can kind of be in that more topper-ish tier. So I think that's kind of why I put this in our Big 12 games of the year. And then we'll swap out Oklahoma State and put in Texas. Texas did not win last year. I just want to throw that out there. Texas didn't win. Baylor won at home. Baylor was undefeated until they played Oklahoma. Baylor had a big year. Texas, they'll have this at home. Texas has just been really not that great. When it comes to these kind of middle of the tier games, that's definitely what's hurt Texas. It's not like every year Texas only loses to Oklahoma and they win every other game. That's never happened. Like that doesn't happen. They lose all these like middle of the tier games and then they occasionally beat Oklahoma and then they get a good bowl game. They have to win these middle of the tier games. Kind of the same thing with Oklahoma State. Well, and both these teams, they really need to win these kind of 2, 3, 4 type seeding games in the Big 12. And then we have Oklahoma TCU. I just think this is a fun one between Lincoln Riley and Gary Patterson. I can't imagine TCU is going to win, but it's just kind of 2 big names, and we needed more than 4 Big 12 games of the year. We'll see if TCU, they pulled the upset before. I know they did in 14, but in 14 they were actually just truly a really good team. So that's probably the difference there. We'll go ahead and move on to our next game, Texas and Oklahoma State. These have been fun. These have been on the Saturday Night Football on ABC the last couple of years. Oklahoma State and Texas, they've kind of gone back and forth. This has kind of been a fun one to watch. I mean, it's not a rivalry. Let's not call it a rivalry. But it's kind of a fun game. We don't get Texas A&M, so we'll just have to see how this one goes. It doesn't compare at all to Texas A&M. But, it's just something fun to watch. Definitely big when it comes to probably who's going to be second in the Big 12 this year. And then Bedlam. This is Oklahoma State's chance. I mean, really, I would say it's not nothing for Oklahoma, but they're just kind of supposed to win this. If Oklahoma State really wants to become relevant and really wants to make a name for themselves, it's in the third to last week of the season when they play against Oklahoma their big rivalry game. It's been a minute since they've won. We'll just kind of have to see how this all goes down. If we get to this point in the season, I think this is going to be a big game. I think this is going to have some Big 12 and maybe even some college football playoff implications, at least for Oklahoma on that side. And then what was the game of the year last year in the Big 12, to close out the season, Oklahoma will play Baylor in the last game of both of their regular seasons. Of course, they played last year, the huge 28-3. Baylor was up at home. Oklahoma came roaring back and won with Jalen Hurts, and then it wasn't that close. I know Charlie Brewer was out for a lot of that Big 12 championship game, and Oklahoma went on to win and then got blown out by LSU. So that's kind of how all that went down. I think this could still be an interesting game. Baylor have had a whole season to implement anything they've wanted to, so I think this could really be a good Baylor team by the end of the year, and I think that's why this could make this a pretty fun one to watch. But right before we get into our picks for today, we want to talk a little bit about the Patrick Party. So our newsletter will be coming out today before kickoff. So if you want to read some quick little notes on the college games, our newsletter will be out for you. It'll be sent out probably around, we'll say 10:30. How about that? And then our Patrick Party, like our original 1-minute videos, those will start next week when the SEC starts. We have a fun location that we're going to do our show from as we make our quick picks for the Auburn-Kentucky game. So be thinking about that. We have a fun one. And no, it's not on a horse, but it's probably second fiddle to that. And then our NFL primetime shows are back. As you saw last week, we were in our little home studio, Patrick Party HQ, whatever you want to call it, in front of all of our TVs, watching all of our NFL games. That's going to be fun. We also have our NFL Pick'em on our Instagram stories. It's fun to see. I love going through and seeing who voted for who. I can see that, so don't make any bad picks. So definitely we encourage you to do that as well. And then, of course, we'll be back every Saturday until, if I can start going to games and they're like 11 a.m., then we'll probably have to pipe this down or pre-record it or something. But, yes, we're going to be here every Saturday from 8 to 9 o'clock in the morning. The first hour of College Game Day. We don't want to conflict with the ending, but it should be a lot of fun. And of course, PatrickParty.com, your home for everything, where you can find anything Patrick Party related, any of our old things, any articles we post. It'll pretty much be all on there. And with that, let's get into our picks. It's time for our Patrick picks here as we close out our show. So, Oklahoma State is taking on Tulsa. Oklahoma State's opening game of the year at home. I don't think it's going to be very close. I like the Cowboys in this one. Then we have Pittsburgh taking on Syracuse. Two kind of middle of the pack, lower tier squads in the ACC. I don't think it's going to be that interesting, but I'm going to have to go with Pittsburgh this one at home in Heinz Field. I think it's going to be okay if you have the ACC network. See, I don't even have the ACC network, so I'm not watching it. And then we have Tulane and Navy. This is going to be very interesting. I will definitely be watching this with the U.S. Open on. Probably the U.S. Open on my big TV. This will kind of be on the side. But can Navy make any improvements? I think this is actually going to be very interesting because nobody is giving Navy a chance. Nobody. Because they were so bad. I mean, they were pitiful. They were terrible. They were the worst. They looked so bad against BYU. Can they redeem themselves? Can they look relevant? I know they were embarrassed. I'm interested to hear they changed their practice, like how they did that, because whatever they were doing wasn't working. And that's just the reality of the situation. So we'll just have to wait and see. Then we have Boston College and Duke. And our next one, the two worst teams in the ACC. This can't be that interesting, I can't imagine. But we'll have to see. For those of you that want to stream this, they'll be playing at 11 o'clock at Wallace Wade Stadium. We'll see if David Cutcliffe can get off with the win. I'm going to go with Duke, though, in that one. And then we have Notre Dame and USF. I can't imagine this is going to be close. I like Brian Kelly's squad. We'll just have to end up seeing. But it's Notre Dame by a lot. Then NC State Wake Forest, the nightcap on the ACC Network and ACC Primetime. I think this is going to be a fun one. We'll actually have to see what Wake Forest is made of because you don't really know when they play Clemson because that wasn't really supposed to be close. But I think they'll win. I like Wake Forest in this one. I don't think NC State's good at all, so I'm going to have to go with the Wake Forest. And then our graphic was messed up. So we're going to pick our Georgia Tech UCF game. This is my game of the day. This was my in our newsletter, game of the week. Georgia Tech UCF at Bobby Dodd. They put in some new lights, the LEDs, some new turf. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I want Tech to win. This is a big game for them, and I'm going to go ahead and pick them. I'm going to pick Georgia Tech to win this game at home against a ranked team, and they might even be ranked next week. We'll just have to wait and see. And then our final game here on the Patrick Party pregame show, Louisville takes on Miami, and a big one in Louisville, Kentucky at Cardinal Stadium. I like this one for Louisville. I really think Louisville could surprise people. They had a better team than a lot of people gave them credit or thought they would last year. Everyone thought it was going to be awful after the Bobby Petrino disaster, or it wasn't a disaster. You got a Heisman Trophy winner out of it, but it ended in a disaster. So I like Louisville in this one. I just don't think Miami is that great. I think they've gotten a little bit of hype, and I like Louisville at home in our final game here as we pick on the Patrick Party pregame show. So that's going to be all. That's going to be it from us. We're so excited that you joined us, and I'm honored you joined us here on our second week of the Patrick Party pregame show and our second week of college football. So we're going to be back next week at a big show. The SEC is back in just about 7 days and about 2 hours. So we are so excited. We're going to break down the Auburn-Kentucky matchup and all of the SEC. So much to talk about. I mean, Mike Leach is in the SEC, so we're going to at least have 15 minutes worth of that. So thank you for joining us, and we'll be back next week. Of course, NFL Primetime is coming out tomorrow, our Primetime with Patrick, and then our newsletter will be out later today. You can subscribe if you haven't already at patrickparty.com. Until next time, I'm Patrick Bingham saying so long, and War Eagle, everybody.